Welcome to the Out on a Limb podcast. We are all interconnected to a greater web of consciousness. Our aim is to open your mind to a new world through having open-minded discussions about what we perceive our reality to be.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out on a Limb podcast with your hosts, Samantha and Allison and Will. And we are here again with another special guest, Dr. Penni Vachon. We are super excited that Penni could join us today because it's a topic that we haven't really tackled much here on this podcast, and that is holistic health practices. We're going to hear from a medical practitioner herself who is also on the woo-woo scale. So she is very steeped in spirituality, but also the practicality of the physical and medications and supplements and all of this kind of stuff that will support us on our growth and evolution.
Which we need more people like that.
Yes.
Because we were just talking about how we're having symptoms and you go to a doctor and a doctor's like, I can't help you.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So among Penni's many amazing talents and skills and abilities, she is an integrative nurse practitioner. She's a transpersonal and trauma healing hypnotherapist. And she is the founder and owner of Lowcountry Wellness Center and also the Peace Center for Healing. So welcome, Penni.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
What's interesting, and one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, because it was present on our minds lately, being that tomorrow's a full moon, a super full moon. And this is interesting. People I know that do parasite cleanses say to do it on a full moon because there's some reason that, isn't that weird? It sounds odd, right?
I didn't know that.
No, it's not odd.
I understand it from one perspective.
But I want to hear from you why people might want to consider doing a parasite cleanse or thinking about that or investigating that, and also why it matters the time of the month that you do it.
Yeah. Well, first let's tackle the why. I always joke with my patients in a trick question. I say, how many people have parasites? And this is just a trick question for y'all. So what's the number? How many people?
I'm not going to answer because I heard the answer.
What's the percentage of it?
I would say it's 100% because
It is, right? It's 100% of living people have parasites.
Yeah.
The issue is, are the bugs an issue or not? Is our terrain, our internal terrain, our background environment healthy enough to overcome the toxin that the bugs are releasing? We all have them. And so think about it just like the tides, right? We live in a coastal community and the tides get stronger as we get closer to the full moon because the gravitational pull does that. So it's the same concept with the bugs in our body. So as we get closer to the full moon, the bugs get pulled out of their deep hiding spaces, deep in the cells, and start to make their way out into your circulating system and your digestive tract a little bit easier. So we just take advantage of that. And we do our full moon cleanses exactly around the full moon. And we typically will start, if we're doing a week-long one, we'll start three days before the full moon, and we'll finish it up 3 days after the full moon.
Interesting. And so what kinds of symptoms should people be on the lookout for to determine whether they might need this?
Well, again, 100% of people need it, right? So everybody needs to do it. We're one of the only civilized countries that doesn't do them routinely for our patient population. So my general rule is if you are eating pretty clean and you don't have any pets and you don't ever walk outside barefoot and you don't swim in anything, then you could do it every 6 months. And if any of the above apply, then you got to do it quarterly. And if you're a sushi eater or you eat pork or you're in pluff mud a lot or things like that, then we might do it a little bit more regularly. It just kind of depends. And so from a symptom perspective, things that we're looking at, digestive issues, so constipation and or diarrhea, we'll see bloating, we'll see neuro symptoms, so headaches. This is the time of the month where floaters are picking up. So anybody that's got eye floaters, side note, those are parasites swimming their way through your vitreous fluid.
Whoa.
I know that the other day and I'm like, I just need to clean my eyes.
You just checked off a half a dozen boxes for Samantha right now. So.
I am thoroughly disgusted.
So headaches are another big thing. Some people will get rashes as we get closer to the full moon just because the toxins are releasing a little bit stronger. And so any of those, and that's just skimming the surface of symptoms, right? But those are kind of the big common ones that we see for the masses.
Inflammation?
For sure, right? Well, the bugs are releasing toxicity, and that toxicity can target the joints, it can target the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the cells. Hence why we get a lot of headaches and stuff, because there's a neurotoxin that gets released from all of these bugs.
Wow.
In fact, we are made up more of bugs than we are of our own tissue.
Wow.
I literally, after this podcast, when I'm heading home, I want to come to your place and pick something up. I just,
Yeah.
I'm so skeeved right now. So just like,
Yeah.
well,
Little
because
heebie-jeebies, right?
seen all of that.
Yeah.
So I could start like today or tomorrow, even though it's a full moon tomorrow, and it'll still work.
Exactly. And that's it. We always try to take advantage of the full moon, but like I tell everybody, right, the best time for you to do parasite cleanse is when you're actually going to do it.
Okay.
Right. So if we can time it around the full moon, great. And if not, I really don't care. Just do it. Right. Like
wow.
better out than in is always my philosophy. So let's just kill what needs to get killed and let's excrete it out. The big thing is making sure that the body is draining adequately, right? We don't want to go and do a lot of parasite killing if we're not going to be clearing it. So meaning I wouldn't do that when somebody's got constipation, right? I need to get their intestines dumping first so that when we come behind and we have die-off, we can excrete that die-off and we're not creating a host of other issues in the body, because all of that die-off stuff builds up and all those toxins are now sitting and stuck in the gut where they fester and grow into other issues.
So you mentioned a lot of things about when you would want to do this more frequently. And you talked about being a pet owner, which I thought was interesting because pretty much everybody is, or having your feet in the grass even, or swimming in the ocean, for example. So what kinds of parasites are we picking up from those areas in our pets and things?
So our big ones that we see are nematodes, trematodes, and cestodes. And so those are the big ones that we all have in varying quantities of it. It's not surprising when somebody does a parasite cleanse that they'll see some liver flukes come out. And if you've ever seen rice pilaf, you can imagine kind of what the pilaf piece looks like. And sometimes in liver flukes, we'll kind of see that pilaf looking thing kind of stuck to the bowl of the toilet. And that's literally parasites cleaning out from the liver.
Wow.
And so it just depends. Sometimes you're the unlucky person that has to assist the parasite on its way out. Sometimes we get big tapeworms or roundworm or hookworm and things like that. And so sometimes they have to be helped on their exit out of the body. I tell everybody, 80% of what we pass is naked to the visible eye, which means 20% is visible to the visible eye.
Wow.
I hope you're in the 80%, but know that you might be in the 20%.
There's this guy on the internet who does these, and I can't remember if it's like, one of the TikTok kind of things or whatever, where like he has a microscope and he'll like scrape the bottom of the cat's feet and then put that, prepare a slide.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
We have our cats sleeping in
Yeah.
our
Same.
Right up here on your head.
yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I say, if you've got a pet, especially if that pet is in your bed, you need to parasite cleanse a little bit more regularly, right? Because they're tracking all of that in and putting it on your pillow. And
so-
what are you doing? You're inhaling it all. You're breathing it in. You're taking it in from your skin.
I think we need to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, seriously. Well, and my sister,
Trigger warning.
Yes, exactly.
Grossness ahead.
she lives in Uganda, and I just thought, okay, this happens there, really.
Yeah.
It's like, they'll just say, oh, you got a little bump on your leg. Oh, let's push that. And all of a sudden a parasite comes
Oh
out.
my
Like,
gosh.
Yeah.
they get it every which way, and she's constantly doing cleanses. So I just thought, well, that's
a third world problem.
That's them. Yeah.
That's back to what you said, that we're the only country that doesn't do it regularly.
Correct.
Because we're a clean country, we're a civilized country, we're a
Exactly.
Talk about that.
Or so we thought.
yeah. Wow.
Or so we thought.
conversation.
So how is this similar to something like a candida cleanse? Like how important is that, and how often should
so candida cleanse is a completely different ball of wax. A candida cleanse, so candida being a fungal infection that happens to the body, is fed by sugar. And so when I think of somebody who has got a candida issue going on, my first thought is, do you crave sugar? How much sugar do you crave, right? Because these bugs send a signal to the brain that says, feed me. And what do they want? They want sugary foods, right? So they want sweets or high carb things and stuff like that, because it actually feeds them. So when we're doing a candida cleanse, we're specifically eliminating all sugar from the body, natural and processed. We cannot allow any sugar in order to let these candida bugs naturally die off. So the diet for that is a very strict and very rigid diet, very different than what we're doing for a parasite cleanse.
And what would be the source of the candida fungus or the candida bugs? I mean, where would
So we all have a very, it came from diet originally, right? We ate it in something. For us gals, we're used to that in terms of getting a yeast infection, right? That's candida overgrowth. So we all have candida in our bodies. It's just, what's the ratio? Is it, stable and controlled? Again, kind of going back to that terrain environment, right? Is my terrain strong enough to overcome whatever this bug is? Or are there external things or internal things that are weakening my terrain, allowing these opportunistic things to, grab hold and become symptomatic?
Gotcha.
Now, in terms of no sugar at all, that includes honey, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's no sugar at all. No sweeteners, no agave, honey, nothing, right? No monk fruit,
Even
anything
stevia?
that breaks down to a sugar in the body.
Does stevia break down, or is that a different?
Yep.
Oh,
Nope.
really?
Yep.
Okay, this list is very extensive.
I thought that I had read somewhere that there are certain honeys that actually kill candida sometimes.
So there's some theory on it, but it's always a mixed bag of, again, you've got to know what's the terrain, right? So without knowing the terrain, I kind of just go, we're just going to eliminate all sugar, right? We're going to, for up to 6 weeks, because from a lifestyle perspective, from a quality of life perspective, to stay on an anti-candida diet longer than 6 weeks, it's brutal. It's borderline inhumane. It is so restrictive that mentally it's just a mind game. And it becomes a really challenging mind game. So I limit it to 6 weeks at a time. I go, let's do 6 weeks. Maybe we'll pulse off, we'll make some wise choices. And then we might, do a brief version of it again. But we're going to do it in 6-week increments just for your sanity, for nothing else.
Well,
I was going to say, just as an example, give just a basic portion of the diet. Yeah. Because I'm trying to wrap my head around, because I'm thinking everything that I'm going to eat is going to have
fruits too,
some sort of sugars in it.
Correct. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So, the easiest way to describe an anti-candida diet, which Will and Allison, I know you guys are vegan now, it's a carnivore diet.
The carnivore diet. But you could eat veggies with the meat.
You have to have low glycemic, very low glycemic. So you got to be very specific in what you eat. Yeah. So you can have lettuce and things like that, right? But anything that has a natural sugar content to it, it's off limits.
So strictly carnivore.
And so after you finish the carnivore, then you need to do the parasite cleanse.
Correct. Yeah. And often I'll pair them together, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I'll kind of finish it off, with a parasite cleanse just to tidy up the environment. And then we'll go on a nice, good, strong probiotic to rebuild what we've just taken out.
Yeah.
And how many days or weeks into it does your body stop craving the sugar? Like that the signals start to...
It really depends on what the load is. So, if it's more of a mild case, you might have that, internal dialogue stop in a few days. But if you're somebody who's having candida in the mouth and candida in the vagina and systemic candida, right? You've got skin rashes and stuff, then that internal dialogue might take a little bit longer. It may be a 4-week process instead of a 4-day process.
I love how you say that internal dialogue. That it's like so lovely. It's just like,
she has a nice way of talking about gross things.
Yeah. Well, and
here's a practice.
We did jump into the candida thing, but can we go back to the parasite? Because I'm curious what all that involves. What is it you're actually consuming for the parasite cleanse?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot of parasite cleanses out there. The one I use the most is a product line called Cellcore. Cellcore's been out for about a decade now. What I love about it is it's all plant-based and it's based in humic and fulvic acids. So it's based in carbon technology. So very minimal reaction, or the potential rather of having what we call a Herxheimer reaction, or which is just basically a rapid die-off reaction. So when we encapsulate in carbon, and it's cleated carbon, meaning it's cleated into humic and fulvic, so the carbon is split into the two molecules, then it encapsulates the die-off really well, and the body excretes it, and we don't get that rapid die-off reaction. So I'd say generally I use Cellcore probably 95 to 98% of the time. And the downside is it's a little pricey, but on the upside, one round is going to last you for a few months. Kind of the second option I like to go with is called the Amish Parasite Cleanse. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It comes from the Amish villages and usually in a tincture form. And it's done depending on the strength of the cleanse that you ordered. It can be done anywhere from a week up to usually 30 days, and you add it to your water and you drink it throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a gentle process.
Yeah, exactly. So a little bit more, a little bit longer, but usually a little bit more gentle. So if you're really in that, I can't see anything in the 20% category, I will flip out. Then we're going to go probably with something a little less aggressive, and we'll have a nice gentle parasite cleanse. It's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. However, you're less likely to see anything or need to assist anything on its exit out with that one.
And then you've said that a couple of times now, and I'm just
needing to assist.
I have a deep breath because
who would be
right? Because I'm thinking to myself, I've been to some interesting places in the world, and I just wonder what's in there.
Yep, exactly. Well, I'll tell you, I did a very aggressive parasite cleanse last year, and all of my patients know the one thing in life I cannot handle is poop. I can talk about it all day, but if I see it, I smell it, I know that it's there, I will throw up. I have literally broken scrub in the operating room because the patient pooped on the table. I have thrown up in patients' rooms because poop got on my glove. Like, it's the one body fluid I can't handle. So the hard rule with my patients is when it comes time for parasite cleanse, what you may not ever do, unless you want a quick discharge from my practice, is you will never give me details. You may give me a thumbs up and a text like things are going well or not. If you have questions about what you passed, you will forward that to my nurse, who will appropriately screen it and make sure that I never see it. And so years ago, I had a patient doing a parasite cleanse, and she'd been sick for years and nobody could figure it out. In fact, she actually had an exploratory laparotomy surgery because they couldn't figure out the source of her abdominal pain. And we figured it out Sunday morning at 7 a.m. when she passed a 39-inch long worm.
Oh my gosh.
And how long's the intestine?
27 feet for the small intestine, 9 feet for the large.
Just a portion.
And so what I had her do, of course, she called me, and I knew it was parasite cleanse week. I knew it was going to be bad. I answered the phone and I said, you better not say what I think you're about to say at 7 a.m. And she said, I'm freaking out. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And all I said was, better out than in. I don't want to know details. Please don't tell me I'm laying in bed. Like, oh my gosh. And then she said, well, it was 39 inches. And I was like, oh my God.
Who got the
First of all, how do you know that?
Yeah.
She said, well, we're tiling the floor. So I had to tape measure out. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God, it hit me my gag reflex. Like, I can't. Oh my God, you touched it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't. But then what I had her do is I had her put it in a baggie because she already touched it. So she's committed. Yeah. And I said, take that to your surgeon's office tomorrow and let them know here's what they missed.
Oh, wow.
And she's never had abdominal pain again. And that was almost 4 years ago.
Wow.
Crazy.
Amazing.
That is wild.
So,
see, yeah. I like the idea of the slow version that slowly strangles them so that we know that they're just, instead of kicking and screaming on the way out. Slow is.
Is it possible for somebody to have that kind of thing, maybe not 39 inches, without having any kind of abdominal discomfort or anything at all?
Yeah. That's actually the norm. So she was the outlier in that she was so symptomatic from a digestive perspective. But the majority of us, we wouldn't know it's there.
Oh, see, I thought
unless it's making its way out.
Yeah, I thought tapeworms, it always made you, what was it? That like people would say, yeah, I can't gain a pound because the tapeworm eats it or whatever.
Right.
So
hers was a ropeworm.
Tapeworm. Okay.
Yeah, hers wasn't a tapeworm. It was a ropeworm. 39-inch long ropeworm.
Oh gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, we jumped right into the nitty gritty.
Right.
I'm sweating.
Before we talk about Penni's background, so I want to get into we're going to take a little break from the nitty gritty for just a moment. Let everybody relax.
Go wash your
hands.
Go wash your hands.
Right.
Let's all ground.
Hit pause. Go wash your hands. Drink some water. Purified water at that.
We have known Penni for a number of years, and just in the 5, 6, 7 years that we've known you, you have evolved substantially in terms of your gifts, and your spiritual growth has just been phenomenal, and the gifts that you now help to help others to evolve and to help others to heal, particularly from trauma. But when you were growing up, was it completely all this scientific left brain stuff, or were you seeped in religion? Was there any of the woo-woo?
So it was an interesting house I grew up in. My dad was an engineer by day and a numerologist and herbalist by night. And so I grew up knowing that we could have science and woo married in one. And so when I went to nursing school, I knew coming out of nursing school that I needed to marry the two, right? That I couldn't all just be analytical and clinical, that I needed to pull the woo in, but I didn't know the spirituality side of the woo. The woo for me was acupuncture and herbalism and things like that, and homeopathy. The spiritual side of it came, as you know, much later in my career. So.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about that growth. When did you start to evolve from traditional medicine, or did you always incorporate some of the holistic understanding in that?
Yeah. So even in nursing school, I was always a little bit more on the woo side, more Eastern than Western medicine, just because that's how I grew up and how I was raised. In fact, when I was 12, I had a both bone forearm fracture, and all I wanted was the neon pink cast that all the other kids got, so that everybody could write their name on it, right? Like I just wanted the neon pink. Thank God I broke my arm. Thank you, right? Let me get the cast. And my dad was like, "Oh no, we're not doing a cast." I was like, "No, we're doing the hot pink one." Like I already talked to the guy. He said I could have hot pink. My dad's like, "No. I need you to put her in a removable plaster because I'll need to put a poultice on it every night." And I was like, no poultice. No. I want the hot pink thing. Hot pink with a Sharpie. That's what I want. Needless to say, my dad won. And so 4 weeks later, my forearm fracture was completely healed. And the surgeon was floored. And my dad was like, "That was my poultice. You're welcome." And I was like, "Damn it, Dad. I just wanted the freaking cast." Like,
right.
Took all of my damn childhood away just because you had to put a gentian blue poultice of whatever godness, who knows what else was in there. Like, I just know I was stained for a long time.
Wow.
That is amazing. So did you get any pushback though from traditional medical folks?
Oh God, yes.
Tell us about that, and how do you handle that?
Yeah. In fact, I remember one day in particular, I was in the operating room. My background is a surgical nurse practitioner, and we were in the middle of operating, and the surgeon that I worked with turned to me and said, "Hey, I saw Jane Doe in the hallway yesterday, and she told me you sent her to acupuncture for her tennis elbow," with an eye roll. And I said, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "Well, I told her when your voodoo doesn't work, I'll just operate on it." Now, mind you, I'm in the middle of operating. I've got instruments in both hands. And I chucked one of them across the room so fast and so hard. And I turned to him and I said, "Voodoo? Voodoo? Acupuncture that's been around for, I don't know, 7,000 plus years compared to hand surgery? Who the freak is doing voodoo?" And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, I've hit a touch point, a hot spot." And I was like, "You know what? Just shut up. Don't talk to me right now. No more talking for the rest of the day. You cannot speak to me anymore."
Oh my God.
And so, of course, he came up to me after that surgery and he was like, I didn't know that like that meant something big to you." And I was like, "Okay, sir, do not go around telling people that acupuncture is freaking voodoo. It's amazing. Like, why are we not all doing that?" Oh, so, that kind of cinched for me that I couldn't stay in the system, right? The system being the insurance-based world, because this is what the mentality was.
Yeah.
And so I knew pretty quickly that I needed to go back to school and get my doctorate and get the hell out of that system and go and do my own thing. So.
Wow.
That is wonderful. So what is the
That's
goal?
a great experience.
Yeah.
When you created, I want to talk about the Center for Peace and Healing later, but in terms of your medical practice now, what was the goal for you when you created that, and what do you hope to accomplish through that?
Yeah. So when I started Lowcountry Wellness Center, it's been 7 years this month that we've been open. It was to have an affordable, high quality, holistic option for healthcare. And that transition really happened in 2018 when I became an autoimmune patient. And I realized that holistic autoimmune care in Charleston didn't exist. And if it didn't exist with me, with my alphabet soup, then it sure as hell wasn't existing for anybody else without my alphabet soup and without all of the connections that I had. And so I set out to create a place where people could come, get high quality care, get affordable care, and get it with a holistic, again, that East meets West approach, right? I'm not anti-pharma. I'm just, maybe we don't do that first. Maybe we try some other things. And if we have to come back to pharma, then we will. And so that was always my mentality going into it. And that's still the approach that I use today with patients, My goal when a new patient comes to me is, let's look at your laundry list of meds and let's see how quickly we can get you off of these, right? Let's swap these over to homeopathy or to herbalist or whatever, right? Let's support the body in other ways while we work on the mind and the spirituality piece of it, right? Because it's all one person. So we can't just compartmentalize. And that's what the traditional healthcare system does. It compartmentalizes.
Absolutely.
So when you say mind, body, and spirituality, how do you address all of those aspects then within your practice, and how do you approach your clients with that understanding?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we do a lot to get to know each other. I tell my patients always, my goal is to be your healthcare navigator. This is not a dictatorship. I am here to navigate your bus for you and tell you what the road looks like if you go right and what the road looks like if you go left. But in order to fully give you all the directions, I need to know how you got on this road in the first place, right? So I need to know about your ACEs, those adverse childhood events. I need to know about your upbringing. I need to know, how were your parents? What was their relationship like? How healthy was your mom when you were pregnant, when she was pregnant for you? What was your delivery like? If you know anything about that, right? And so we go all the way back, and I trace it back to, talk to me about your childhood. Were you vaccinated? Were you not? Did you grow up in a new home? Did you grow up in an old home? Did you drink city water? Did you drink well water? Right? Where did you go to college? If you did, was it in downtown Charleston where it's full of mold? Or did you maybe go somewhere up in the mountains where we didn't have issues like that? Right? And so we've got to go back to the beginning for all of that. And then as we start to kind of build this history, we start to talk about, the physical things, right? Like, was there trauma? And everybody has trauma. It's just, was it the big T traumas or is it the little T traumas? We all have trauma. And so we start to talk about the relationship and what trauma does and how that presents in the body, both emotionally, but also physically. And then when we talk about trauma, we have to, of course, incorporate stress. So when we talk about that, we talk about, the adrenal glands are these two little walnut-sized glands that sit on top of our kidneys, and they can't distinguish stress. They just know that the body is having a stress. So whether it's a physical stress, an emotional stress, or spiritual stress, they don't know. So our job is to de-stress those glands so that we can live a long, healthy life. And so we kind of pull it all in, right? And we got to work on the physical while we work on the mental, while we work on the spiritual, and it all happens simultaneously at the same time.
So, wow.
Right.
It is amazing, all of the things that you were labeling and reeling off there that can affect us that we don't even think about.
That's holistic.
Yeah.
It's like
the,
definitely.
yeah,
right.
It's the full picture. And as you were talking about that, this flash came to my mind of, the physicians of the old that used to make house calls that were your family physician. They knew you from birth. They knew you from,
Right.
From the point of conception. So they didn't have to ask all those questions because they already knew the history. And so they could apply that holistic approach already from the beginning, where modern day times.
Not only do they not know you, everything is isolated in different boxes for different body
Right.
parts.
Compartmentalized to each specific segment of the body or whatever it is, and you don't get that holistic approach. And I think that's the thing, and that might be a misnomer for many people, is people believe that a holistic approach is this woo-woo aspect. No, a holistic approach is the whole system. Not just your physical, but your whole upbringing, like you said, it's this whole approach. And so I know that coming from the VA system and talking with veterans, and you start talking about holistic, they think it's nothing but woo-woo, it's acupuncture, it's yoga, it's meditation. Well, no. You're missing the point here. And so that has to be, I think that's some languaging that needs to be, not changed, but, expounded upon. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I say it, right? When we're talking about a holistic approach, I'm talking about whole with a W, right? Holistic, right? A whole body approach.
Is that similar? Okay, so what's the difference between that and like a naturopath?
So naturopath is its own degree, and most states, they're not prescribers. They are, let's just talk about the state of South Carolina. South Carolina does not recognize their degree as a naturopathic physician. They are only licensed, actually, they're not licensed in South Carolina at all. They're only allowed to practice as a health coach in the state of South Carolina. And so in most of the Southern Belt, naturopathic physicians or naturopathic practitioners, because you can be a naturopath without being a physician, it just depends on which state you're in. It determines how you're able to practice. I've got some great friends that are naturopathic physicians that have their own practices that, one of them has a huge infertility clinic. And, she's doing procedures and things like that. So it really is bound by state law where, a nurse practitioner in South Carolina is a nurse practitioner in California, is a nurse practitioner in New Hampshire. So very different in that regard. There's not a lot of naturopathic programs out there, but the naturopathic focus is what we basically just talked about, right? It's drilling it down to the root cause of the why. Why did this happen in the first place, and how can I help the body overcome? Or, maybe not overcome, but how can I support the body as it goes through this journey of whatever it is? So it's just a very different approach to how we look at healthcare.
Okay. So in addition to all of this that you understand about our physical history, now that you have an understanding of reincarnation, other incarnations, how our past life history can also now affect our body, particularly in terms of trauma and how that presents. Is that now separate for you in the Peace Center that you created, or do you sort of incorporate that in both sides? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so there's a blending of both, but there's also a separation for some things. So, again, because my approach is a little bit unique in that I'm treating the whole, we do, like I said, bring spirituality in. So sometimes we have to talk about, let's just say an autoimmune issue. And I have to have that discussion. Is this your issue? Or is this an issue you brought forward with you because you had a karmic load to clear it, right? The trauma that you underwent, was it your trauma or was it karmic trauma, right? Was it generational trauma that you came into body to be the one to put an end to it, right? And so, that type of stuff, it's always this kind of blending of, in my Lowcountry Wellness Center, I need to get you over these hurdles so that I can get you physically well. But maybe we do some Reiki, or maybe we do some transpersonal and trauma healing hypnotherapy. And I do those under the Peace Center for Healing umbrella. So that way I kind of keep the two entities a little bit separate, but it's still me running both of them.
In terms of how trauma presents in the physicality, does it pretty much run the gamut, or are there some consistencies in how it presents that you notice?
Yeah, I mean, there are some consistencies, but like I tell everybody, each person is unique, and their trauma experience is unique, and their trauma presentation is unique. But there are some commonalities, right? So if we talk about sexual trauma, for example, in particularly women, for a lot of gals that had sexual trauma later in life, they're going to come forward with more reproductive type of issues. They're going to have, ovarian issues or uterine issues or things like that. They're going to hold their weight in a particular way, just because we know that that's where the fat storage is, that hormone stores are. And when there's a trauma, it tends to store more hormones in the lower abdomen. And so she's going to have a particular weight pattern, to what her abdomen looks like. And that kind of tells me we might need to tiptoe into this conversation about sexuality and talk to me about your past, right? Do you recall anything? Because sometimes, right, our brain is so good at protecting us that it blocks the trauma out entirely, which is what I love about doing trauma work under hypnotherapy. Because we can go into that deep subconscious where everything is stored and recorded, and we can clear it from the physical without having to relive it and rehash it.
Exactly.
So how do you know which way to go? Like if someone presents themselves and they're like, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm a little overweight and I hold this down, if I came to you, like, I just can't move this. I don't know what's going on. And I don't know, maybe I have headaches, maybe I don't, whatever. But how do you know, what's your deciding direction on which way you're going to take someone?
So I give everybody options, right? It's never, like I said, it's never a dictatorship, right? I go, all right, let's explore the physical piece. Let's talk about the mental piece, and let's explore the spiritual piece. And if you want to do all of those things, here's what that looks like, right? So here are your options, and you come back and you let me know what you want to do. But a big piece of that is, as Will and Allison know, I was given this gift of being a medical intuitive. So many times I already know the answer before I ask the question, but I ask it just to help them. And so usually I already know what we're going to do, but I'll just ask the question anyway, so that you feel like you're playing along.
Right. That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
Like we all think we have free will, right?
So,
No, but I love that. And I don't think that until you said that now about being a medical intuitive, I don't think that was brought to light, but I think that's your secret weapon.
It is, right. And it's definitely not something I lead with, right?
Yeah. Well, you have
That-
all that other information, all those other tools, all that other that you've gathered, so you know what the heck to do with the person, which is beautiful. But then to have that spidey sense is just, that nails it.
And if I recall correctly, you didn't trust that, or you kind of pushed against that. Tell us about how that all came about.
Yeah, that was really kind of the beginning of the spiritual journey. I'd gone and gotten my first Reiki session, had no idea what the heck I was going into. And at the end of that, she said, your guides wanted me to let you know that you're a medical intuitive. And I was like, okay, great. She's seeing people. So this is great. Like, this lady's clearly crazy. And then I said, and yes, of course I'm intuitive. I'm a nurse. Like, duh, no brainer. And she was like, oh, you think that that's what it is? And I was like, yeah, my nursing instructors like 100 years ago told me that I would have my nurse's intuition. So thank you. That's what it is. And then she started to give me examples that my guides had given her and said, think about these times that you knew that this was going to happen and nobody else knew. And as I thought about it, I had to think back and I go, I got really pissed off that people didn't know. Like, how did you not know that, Mr. Smith was going to go into cardiac arrest at 3:17 in the morning? Like, why was that not common knowledge? I told you to have the damn crash cart ready. Like, what? Why did you not?
Oh my God. I love this.
And it never dawned on me back then that not everybody had that. I literally thought that we all walked into the room and instantly knew what was wrong with the people. I just took the assumption that because I was a nurse, all nurses had that. I didn't know until this Reiki session 5 years ago.
What?
And she
5 years ago?
Yep, 5 years ago. And she said, oh, no, honey, no, that's your gift. And I was like, but is it? I don't know about that. So the challenge she left me with was just lean into it a little bit, right? Like, you don't need to dive straight in. Don't dive into the deep end, but maybe just tiptoe your way down into that. And so I started to explore, what would that look like if I leaned into that a little bit. And then I started to catch myself that I would say stuff to a patient, about, hey, you've got XYZ. And then I would backtrack to justify why I said that, right? You've got XYZ. Oh, because you told me blah, blah, blah. And then finally I got to the point that I go, you have XYZ, take it or leave it. I don't really care. Like, it is what it is. I don't need to justify to you why I said it. Okay. You have it. I know it. You know it. Let's move on with life.
Wow.
Right. But it's about trusting the outcome. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's about trusting the outcome, trusting your gifts, and not having to apologize for it or explain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's taken a very long time, as you two know. I come back from my channelings. Every time it's about, do I still need, like, is this for real? Like, are you sure this is what it is? Every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's funny.
It's amazing. Do you have any particular guides, while we're on that topic, that help you in terms of the medical work that you do?
I do have guides with me all the time, but truly the interesting thing is how things come to me is I tend to look and I see things in a video reel, like Technicolor images. So it'll either just come in and out my mouth before my filter can catch it, or I actually see it play out. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me push on that and see what happens, or let me listen to that and see. So I wouldn't say that, there's any particular guide that's with me when it's happening. It all happens so quick, I can't tell.
Yeah.
It was so funny. Wow. There was a time that I was doing a group regression at the Salt Cave here in Charleston, right? And Penny was one of the people that came to participate, and just offhandedly, and I'm transparent here on this podcast, and you guys are looking at me again, right?
Yes. All eyes.
So I don't mind telling you my stories or being vulnerable, but anyway, so Penny comes up to me at some point and she goes, when I get near you, there's this smell of moss or like stones, like an ancient kind of thing. This ancient mossy,
fresh tilled old dirt. Described it.
And then that's all, and then leaves, and I'm like, what the hell? What does that mean? I go home and I'm all worried. Do I have some kind of rare, weird disease that's going to kill me in a week? I had no idea, but I was really nervous. So anyway, we finally did a channeling, and I asked about it. I'm like, why do I smell like old dirt?
Why do I smell like old dirt?
And it had something to do with a background or a past life in, with Terra beings and in that kind of atmosphere,
That earthy,
or I was some sort of earth woman that had the ancient recipes. I don't know what they call those people, that the wise,
The old medicine women.
the old medicine woman.
An old medicine woman. Yeah, that's what it was.
But you didn't.
I'm going to start.
You didn't
I didn't know it then. Yeah, I didn't know that. So, it was always interesting when the smells would come to me, and that's always been there. I just, again, thought everybody was smelling the same damn fresh tilled dirt that I was smelling. I had no idea that other people weren't smelling it. And so when we did that session, I was maybe at the most a year into my journey. We could go back because I journaled after that. So I have the date. It's in one of my journals. But, getting the smell of things and trying to figure out, oh, wait, that's an ethereal smell? Oh, shit. Okay. You don't just smell like decaying roses. Okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. Like, now let me figure out what the hell decaying roses means, because I don't know. Like, it just smells like dead roses. I don't know. So, yeah. So years ago, I had set the intention that if they were going to continue to give me smells, then they needed to give me the dictionary to go along with the smell.
Yes,
because I can't freaking know what these smells mean.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm like, what do you mean?
Give me
Penny?
the
What does that
reference
mean?
card that goes with the smell.
Right.
You know?
Exactly right. If you're gonna give it me an odor, then you need to tell me what the frig the odor means. Like,
So
I
did
can't
Allison
figure that
do
shit out.
Anything else other than that she was an old sage woman?
No, I think it was really, I think we had talked about it after, and it was really that it was the medicine woman thing. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was funny.
Yeah.
Made me paranoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess my husband would tell me if I smelled like old dirt.
I haven't smelled old dirt, so
Oh my gosh.
or
Okay.
fresh tilled dirt. Sorry, fresh tilled.
Yeah. Fresh tilled old dirt. Yeah.
That's it.
That's
yeah.
Well,
hilarious.
see, like I know whenever I smell, like there's a certain sense of, it's an alcohol smell. It's a very specific alcohol smell. I'll walk past my husband. He's like, I've got a nose of a bloodhound. And I just stop and I smell it. It's like, noon or whatever. And I'm smelling this alcohol smell and I'm like, you need to check your blood sugar.
Yes. You smell the acetone.
Will be through the roof. And he's just like, how do you smell that? And I'm
Wow.
like, I don't know, but it's so disgusting. I just need you to deal with it. Like, like I mean, I can just walk, like he just talks to me half a second as we're passing and I'm all over it.
Well, there are certain disorders that you can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like a diabetes dog. That's what they're picking up on, is the acetone smell that comes from hyperglycemia.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say that, I bring this up as a topic because it's interesting to me because that's the pattern that I find in myself is that, I am a bit intuitive to my own body and I listen to it quite well, but there are times where, we all have our own odors, right? And so I haven't been using a deodorant for, I don't know how many years. I use the crystal rock, the little salt rock type of thing.
Yep.
And it seems when I can tell when I'll say my gut balance is out of whack, my right armpit will have a distinct odor. Never my left, it's always my right. And I know that I need to shift something in my diet. It's time to shift something because there's a certain odor that takes place. And so
this conversation, I'm just like, people are going to be like,
hey,
We'll put a disclaimer.
well,
at
it's
the
part, well, it's, we're talking medical stuff,
life.
people, right? But
It's
I
all
mean,
hukin life.
so, you obviously probably have experience with some of that. I mean, can you help me understand that or help our audience understand, to be more cognizant of your.
If you know your regular state.
Right.
And
Right.
when it's.
Yeah. And that's, when I start working with new patients, it's always, that's the background of it is through our process, you're going to get to learn how to read your body really well because you know your body better than any other living human being does. Right. So you're going to start to know your patterns and when your patterns are shifting abnormal. And so, I think it's, especially in the spiritual world, right? We tend to have self-awareness, but in the non-spiritual people, that's a process to get to that, to get to where you just know like, ooh, I'm a little off. Let me go figure out, why. Maybe I need to go sit in silence or meditate and have that internal dialogue. So I think for the majority of people, it's starting to pay attention to the normal signs, right? The normal signs. How many times a day are you pooping? As an average adult, we should be pooping 2 to 3 times a day, every day. And so if you're pooping less than 2 to 3 times a day, you're constipated. Why? What's going on? Right? We should be peeing pretty consistently. It should be pretty colorless. And if it's not, why? What are your kidneys not filtering? Right? How's your blood pressure? Is your blood pressure really high? Well, what do your electrolytes look like? Are you eating enough? Are you getting enough magnesium? What's your vitamin D level look like? So all of these things kind of just go into what our baseline is. So it's really important that people just listen to that internal dialogue to figure out, what is my homeostasis? What's my baseline? And when am I off of my baseline? For us gals, of course, right? Think about our hormone shifts, right? We're constantly on this roller coaster ride. So we need to know what's our baseline hormonally, when we're cycling. And then we need to know what's our baseline hormonally when we're off cycle. And then when we get into postmenopause, that changes everything, right?
It's always
That's it.
Just throw it all up
Well,
in the
it's
air.
interesting that you mentioned that, because the nurse that I would work with at my school, a lot of the staff members would come and go, hey, can you do my blood pressure? And she'll do the blood pressure and they're like, is that high? And she goes, I don't know. What's your normal?
Right.
Everybody's
Yeah,
got,
exactly. What's your baseline?
right, a different normal. But being aware of our body is also important as we progress and evolve metaphysically, because as Will can testify, and you probably can too, those who are empaths or sensitive or mediums who pick up on their clients' things before they see a client, or if you're picking up on stuff that's happening around the globe, if you don't know that it's not yours, then it's very distressing, and you might end up at the doctor looking
Spending
at
$10,000
symptoms
and getting nothing.
Right.
Thinking you're having a heart attack.
that aren't yours.
Yeah.
I've done that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, that's where it's really hard. I call them the box people, right? The traditional providers, because they only treat boxes, right? Everything must fit in a clinical guideline. And so often, you go into the emergency room because you think you're having, chest pain, right? And everybody says chest pain's a heart attack. You're having a heart attack. So the box people are going to go, let's get an EKG, let's get some labs, let's get your vitals. Oh my gosh, let's do the $10,000, $20,000 workup. Fine and dandy. People like me are going, okay, well, let's get your vitals. Let's make sure everything's good there. But what's going on? Where have you been? Who have you been exposed to? What have you been doing? Right? Like, is this you, or is this a collective energy feeding through you? Are you channeling somebody else? Right? Like, did you have a walk-in? Right? Is this you? Especially for people that had a near-death experience, right? Is this the old you, or is this the new you? Did everything change after you had an NDE? Because chances are you had a freaking walk-in that we need to evacuate, right? Or evict, I should say, right? We need to evict them. So it's really hard in today's medical society, in the box world, to have the time and knowledge to be able to dedicate anything outside of that box, right? Yeah. So the majority of people are only going to be exposed to the box type of provider. So this is where, as a patient, you've got to do your own self advocacy and say, hey, listen, yep, I'm having XYZ symptom, a headache, the worst headache of my life. Always go to the ER for the worst headache of your life. Always go to the ER for chest pain. But if it's not the big things, then you got to take a step back and go, is this mine, or is this a collective issue? Or is it an empathic issue? Do I need to ground and do some clearing? Do I need to do some cord cutting, right? Do I need to go back and do some past life work and do some releasing of some previous soul karmic shit, And that's where, unfortunately, our traditional American healthcare system lacks. Right. They can only get you through the trauma stuff. And I always say, right, if I'm in a massive car accident, please take me to the trauma center. Anything other than that, do not take me to the freaking hospital. They're likely going to kill me. They're going to think I'm having some, psychiatric emergency because I'm talking to myself or whatever. And, I'll end up in the damn psych ward. And it was really just, I was trying to clear, Betty Lou from me. And I'm like, Betty Lou, you got to go.
Right.
So
how
so
fortunate,
true.
though.
That is so true.
How fortunate for somebody to have a physician like yourself. There are a few, I guess, around the United States, but to be able to have the knowledge and the skills in all of those areas to help with that, because.
And you bring up a good point. So for many of our viewers, they're not in the greater Charleston area. What would you if someone is wanting to seek someone like yourself, what are the things they're wanting to search for? What are they kind of wanting to
Is there a
Yeah.
database
Or is there a
anywhere?
database, right?
There's no database. No, and you'd find that probably the 50 or 100 of us across the country, because there's not a lot. We are the minority of the minority of the minority. It's really just going to be calling around and getting consults, So I would be looking for integrative health practitioners. I would be looking for alternative health practitioners, holistic health practitioners, using kind of those keywords, and then calling and getting a consult and just screening them. I particularly give a 15-minute consult to everybody that wants to think about joining the practice, because I'm not the right fit for everybody, right? If you're looking for that box system, I am 100% not your provider. I'm not.
There are no walls on that box. Yeah.
Well,
Right. Yeah. Years ago when I fired my own box provider, I said, and that's exactly what I said to him, we cannot work together because you only see boxes and I'm a human being and you don't know how to treat humans. I don't fit into any of your boxes. Therefore, you don't know what to do with me. So this is where we'll part ways, and I'll take care of myself from here on out, because I can't trust you and your system. Your system tried to kill me.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So
Well, even something as simple as regulating hormones. The biologists don't have the time or the wherewithal to
exactly.
regularly address that.
Yeah.
It's just not set up that way.
Well, and I was thinking when you asked that question, I've always felt like, okay, look up integrative medicine, but just because they say they're an integrative practice doesn't mean like that they're holistic or anything like that.
Correct. Integrative meaning Eastern and Western, right? So when we say integrative, that's what we're looking at. They're more alternative in terms of bringing in homeopathy, herbalism, acupuncture, things like that. But there's a difference between a spiritually integrative practitioner and an integrative practitioner.
That's why you said minority of the minority of the minority.
Yeah.
Because
Correct.
in that, you're a minority.
Yeah.
So your conventions aren't very big.
Yeah, no, right? It's probably a party of one.
People show up and it's like,
Yeah.
let's share. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. You've given, like all of that. That is so fascinating.
A lot of information. But before we go, since we do focus primarily on metaphysical, spiritual topics like that, is there anything that practitioners or people who are interested in this field should think about? Anything that you're aware of in terms of supplements or anything that would help in their evolution, whether it's linked directly to the physicality, which can affect your spirituality, or vice versa, but anything else you can think of that we haven't even thought to ask?
Yeah, I think, when we think of, herbal things like that, we really want to stay grounded and stay in body, right? So often we're stuck in fight, flight, or freeze or fawn. And so we want to do things purposefully that keep us back in body. And so ashwagandha is a really good supplement that I recommend to a lot of folks. Take it at bedtime to help us stay in body. Grounding regularly, cannot minimize the importance of grounding. In fact, I sleep on a grounding mat. I sit with a grounding mat at my desk all day because I don't have time to get outside. And so grounding is something that is so critical for the body. And especially in our fast-paced society, everybody's wearing thick-soled shoes and we just don't have the time, right? So there's some simple things like investing in a grounding mat to either sleep on or sit on, or get the grounding sheets or whatever. And then, limiting your EMF exposures, right? EMF plays a huge role in the dysfunction of the body. So besides, eating right and eating clean, I think the number one priority I tell my patients in terms of like a dietary thing is I need you to drink clean water. And that means I need you to only drink distilled water. In fact, when patients are going through a detox protocol with me, I will not treat them unless they commit to only drinking distilled water.
Wow.
Because I can't make you better if you're drinking shitty water and you're taking in all of these toxins and heavy metals and prescription drugs and God knows what else gets flushed down, or that has leached out from the ground if you're on a well water. And so that is my one steadfast rule. You must drink good, high quality water. And that means it's distilled. That's my one non-negotiable for anything.
Wow.
That's so interesting, because you hear about Berkey water filters and all these types of filters.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's as simple as getting distilled water.
Just get a distiller. And I love to challenge the folks that have a Berkey or an RO system or reverse osmosis or the Kangen people or whatever. And I'm like, great, do that. and then run it through your distiller and see what your distiller picks up. You will be disgusted and furious that you wasted the money on that when you could have just gone and bought a $60 or $70 distiller and, been drinking good, clean water.
Are those H2O things? Do those really work? The H2O spinner water things?
Oh,
That's
isn't that the
Not to do what we want, not to do what I need a distiller to do.
Okay.
Truly, a distiller is the only thing that's going to remove all of the impurities from your water and give you true, clean, healthy water.
Isn't that the one that adds hydrogen or something like that?
Yeah.
There was something you said, about limiting the EMF,
EMFs.
and I thought it was interesting because I had heard from another channeler that that we're going to discover years. I'm just curious about your opinion about this. That we're going to discover years down the road that it was really bad. Like people are going to go, you drove an electric car because you're exposed to all that like the body was never meant to handle.
Exactly. Right. It's all the disruption, right? Our body is an electrical conductivity thing, right? That's why grounding is so good. That's why we have grounded outlets in our house, right? Because we've got to ground. So we can't always stay in an elevated state. And so what we find is that if we're not regularly grounding, we're burning the body out too quick, right? Mm-hmm. We're breaking down the synapses between the nerves and things like that. And so, basic grounding, in addition to blocking the EMF, that's really what's key. Think back 100 years ago when they didn't have TVs, they didn't have cell phones, and they didn't have Wi-Fi and all of these things, and how healthy these bodies were. They weren't having thyroid issues. They weren't having diabetes. They weren't having brain tumors, and not to the extent that we do in today's society, where we're exposed to all of these external things that are jimmying our cells around in the body, instead of having everything run on the path that God intended for it to run on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you talk about EMF, and I had Allison notice this. We were up in Virginia where we have our property, and there's some of the very high tension leads, the big tall towers, and you can hear them firing off with the the atmosphere.
Luckily, it's not over our house.
No, it's not over. It's just through on a
one
particular bike path that we're on, and I had stopped there, and you can literally feel
and hear it.
Yeah, you can feel it on your skin, and you're just like. Oof. And there's houses that get built under them. I'm like, how
exactly.
Live?
Well, think about, in other countries, they ban the 5G towers from being within a certain range around schools because they know that the 5G is so bad. Where do we want to put them in America? I don't know. We want to rent the top of the schools out to the 5G towers because why would we not want to fry the children's brains? Like, right. They're only the future of our species. We should do that, right? Like, no, we should not do that. That's a bad decision.
Kind of upside down world.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it's gonna. Yeah.
Well, this has been so enlightening and so much fun, and it's always good to talk to you, Penny. You've got such a great sense of humor and an ease with which to talk about all of these.
Yeah, for sure.
All of these topics. We thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us on another episode of Out on a Limb podcast. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And we will see you next time.
See y'all.
Bye.